You ever have one of those moments where the universe seems to tilt on its axis, and everything you thought you knew about your life gets rewritten in the span of a heartbeat? This is the story of how a dead car battery on a foggy Oregon coast road at 2 a.m. turned my world upside down and introduced me to the woman who showed me what it means to be truly seen. My name is Ethan, and this is my true story about the night I was stranded in the middle of nowhere and met the person who would change everything. The warning light on my dashboard had been blinking for the last 30 miles, a faint orange glow I'd been stubbornly ignoring. Classic Ethan move, barreling forward pretending the cracks in my life weren't widening. It was early November and I was driving south from Portland to my tiny apartment in Eureka, California, after a weekend in Seattle that had gutted me. I'd gone up there to see Claire, my girlfriend of 3 years, or as of 6 hours ago, my ex. Our relationship had been fraying for months, tangled in her sharp words and my refusal to admit it was over. This trip was supposed to be our last shot, a chance to patch things up, to remember the spark that had drawn us together in the first place. Instead, I'd walked into her apartment to find her laughing with someone else, her arms around them like they belonged there. The image burned behind my eyes as I gripped the steering wheel. Claire hadn't even flinched when I stood in the doorway, my duffel bag slipping from my hand. "Ethan, don't make this a thing," she'd said, rolling her eyes. "You're always so dramatic." We'd shared a lease, a dog, a life. I'd left without a word, grabbed my bag, and hit the road. No yelling, no tears, just a cold, hollow ache that settled deep in my chest, like I'd never feel whole again. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched ahead, cloaked in fog so thick it swallowed my headlights. This stretch of Oregon was infamous for its isolation. No cell service, no towns, just endless pines and the distant crash of waves against cliffs. The air smelled of salt and wet earth, and the occasional flicker of a deer's eyes in the brush made my heart lurch. I'd been driving for an hour when the car gave a pathetic shudder. The dashboard lights dimmed and the engine died with a faint whine. I coasted to the shoulder, the silence deafening as the car rolled to a stop. "Come on," I muttered, smacking the steering wheel. Not tonight. But the universe didn't care about my plans. I stepped out into the damp night, the fog curling around me like a living thing. The temperature had plummeted, and my flannel shirt and jeans were no match for the chill. My breath hung in the air as I popped the hood, staring at the engine like it might confess its sins. My phone was useless, no signal, 20% battery, and the nearest town was at least 25 miles away. I stood there, hands shoved in my pockets, staring at the dead car, and something inside me cracked. It wasn't just the battery or the car or even Claire. It was everything. The graphic design job I loathed, the crippling student loans, the friends I'd pushed away to keep Claire happy. At 30 years old, I felt like I was drowning in a life I didn't recognize, like everyone else had a map to happiness, and I'd been left to wander blind. The fog muffled the world, and the distant roar of the ocean felt like it was mocking my insignificance. A lone seagull cried overhead, its call sharp and lonely. I opened the trunk, rummaging for the jumper cables I vaguely remembered owning. My dad had shown me how to jump a car once, back when I was 17, but the memory was fuzzy and the cables looked like a tangle of snakes. "You've got this," I said aloud, my voice swallowed by the fog. I was crouched by the battery, squinting at the terminals with my phone's dying flashlight, when I heard the low rumble of an engine cutting through the mist. Headlights pierced the fog, slow and deliberate, and my pulse spiked with a mix of hope and dread. This was the kind of scene where bad things happened in movies. The vehicle pulled onto the shoulder about 30 feet ahead, a weathered Subaru Outback, its roof rack loaded with kayaks and gear. It idled for a moment, exhaust blending with the fog, before the driver's door opened. She stepped out, and even in the dim glow of my headlights, something in me stirred. She was tall, maybe 5'10", with a wiry, athletic build that spoke of outdoor adventures. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun under a knit beanie, and she wore a puffy jacket, cargo pants, and scuffed hiking boots. As she walked closer, the light caught her features, high cheekbones, a faint scattering of freckles across her nose, and eyes that gleamed like storm clouds. gray, maybe blue, impossible to pin down. She looked like she belonged to the wild, like the coast itself had shaped her. "Evening," she called, her voice warm but grounded, with a hint of a Pacific Northwest lilt. "You okay out here?" The question hit me harder than it should have. When was the last time someone asked me that and meant it? "Dead battery," I said, gesturing at the engine. I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm kind of out of my depth." She was already moving toward my car, her steps confident but unhurried. "Mind if I take a look?" "You don't have to," I said, though the cold was sinking into my bones. "I'm sure you've got places to be." She glanced back, and a small smile tugged at her lips. "It's 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. My only plan is a hot shower in bed." "Let me help." She crouched by the engine, her movements precise and practiced. I noticed her hands, strong with short nails and faint scars, the kind earned from climbing rocks or paddling rivers. No rings. Not that I was looking. "Yeah, she's dead," she said, standing and wiping her hands on her pants. "But I've got cables in my car. Sit tight, keep warm. I'll have you running in no time." "I can help," I insisted, though I was shivering and my pride was the only thing keeping me upright. She raised an eyebrow, her gaze softening. "You look like you've been through it, no offense. Let me handle this." "Call it my karma points for the week." There was a quiet strength in her voice, a sincerity that made my chest ache. I'd forgotten people could be this kind without an agenda. "I'm Ethan," I said, the words tumbling out. "If you're saving me, you should at least know my name." Her smile widened, lighting up her face like sunrise over the ocean. "Ethan, huh?" "I'm Nora, and I'm not saving you, just jumping your car. Though out here, it's close enough." She grabbed cables and a portable battery pack from her Subaru, moving with the ease of someone who'd done this 100 times. As she worked, I couldn't stop watching. She'd shed her jacket despite the cold, and her fleece pullover clung to her frame as she connected the cables. There was a grace to her strength, a quiet confidence that wasn't showy but undeniable. "So," she said, not looking up, "what's a guy like you doing on this godforsaken road at 2 a.m.? Not exactly a hot spot." I hesitated. The truth felt too heavy, but the fog and the late hour made honesty feel like the only option. "Rough weekend in Seattle," I said. "Heading home to California. Longer trip than I planned." She made a soft sound, almost a chuckle. "Seattle's good at that." "The city or a person?" Her laugh was low and genuine, and it warmed me more than it should have. "That obvious, huh?" she said, meeting my eyes. In the glow of her headlamp, I saw they were blue-gray, flecked with green, like the sea after a storm. I know that kind of tired. The heart kind. I wanted to spill it all. Claire's betrayal, the way I'd felt invisible in my own life, the suffocating weight of failure. But we were strangers, and this moment was already too raw, too electric with something I couldn't name. "Yeah," I said softly, "something like that." She nodded and went back to work, the clink of metal and the hum of the battery pack filling the silence. I noticed things I shouldn't have. The way her hair escaped her beanie in wispy strands, the focus in her expression as she tested the connection, the way her breath caught slightly when she tightened a clamp. "Stop it," I told myself. "You're fresh out of a relationship. She's just being decent." "There we go," Nora said, stepping back as my engine sputtered to life. She disconnected the cables with quick, sure movements and packed up her gear. "Get that battery checked soon. This jump's a Band-Aid, not a fix." "Thank you," I said, the words feeling small against her kindness. "I don't know what I would have done without you." She shrugged, but her eyes were warm. "Someone got me out of a jam years ago." Just paying it forward, as she turned to leave, a sudden panic gripped me. She'd climb back into her Subaru, drive off, and this would fade into a story. The time a badass kayaker saved me on a foggy highway. "Hey," I called, my voice cracking slightly. "You ever pass through Eureka? I owe you a coffee. Or like a lifetime supply." She paused, her hand on her car door, and looked back with a grin that made my heart stutter. "Eureka, huh? Maybe I will."
"Keep an eye out, Ethan." And with that, she was gone.
Her taillights swallowed by the fog. I drove south, the road stretching endless before me, but for the first time in months, the hollow ache in my chest felt lighter. Nora hadn't just fixed my car. She'd reminded me that kindness exists, that connection can spark in the unlikeliest places, and that sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need when you're too broken to ask for it. The radiator hissed like an angry cat, steam curling up into the cold Nebraska night. I stood on the shoulder of I-80, hazard lights blinking their useless rhythm, the wind slicing through my thin jacket. My phone had one bar and no intention of connecting to anything useful. I was somewhere west of Lincoln, running on fumes of my own, fleeing Omaha after finding Caleb in our apartment with the barista from the coffee shop downstairs. The image was burned behind my eyelids. Caleb's startled face, the barista's bare shoulder, the way they both froze like I was the intruder. Headlights cut through the dark, slow and deliberate. A battered silver pickup eased onto the gravel. The driver killed the engine and stepped out, boots crunching. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, wearing a shearling coat and a knit cap pulled low. A flashlight beam swept over my car, then landed on me. "Looks like you're having a night," he said. His voice was low, warm, like bourbon over ice. Something like that. My own voice cracked. I hadn't spoken to anyone in 6 hours. He crouched by the hood, popped it, and peered inside. Radiator hose split clean through. "You got far to go?" "Denver, eventually." I hugged myself against the wind. "I can call a tow. Nearest town's 20 miles. Garage won't open till morning." He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen better decades. "Name's Eli Whitaker. I've got a thermos of coffee and a spare hose in the truck. Let me see what I can do." I should have protested. Strangers, dark highways, all the warnings. But I was bone-tired and half-frozen, and Eli had kind eyes the color of winter sky. He worked in silence, the flashlight clamped between his teeth, steam fogging around him. 20 minutes later, the engine turned over with a reluctant cough. He slammed the hood and turned to me, cheeks red from cold. "Should hold till you hit a shop. Drive slow, keep an eye on the gauge." I stared at him, this quiet man who'd materialized out of nowhere. "I owe you. Dinner, gas money, something." He considered, rubbing the back of his neck. "There's a diner up the road. Open all night. Coffee's terrible, but the pie's honest. My treat." The diner was a neon-lit relic called the Cornhusker Cafe, its sign flickering like it was on its last breath. Inside smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee. We took a booth by the window, vinyl seats cracked and patched with duct tape. A waitress named Darla, ponytail, tired smile, poured 2 mugs without asking. Eli shrugged off his coat. Underneath, he wore a faded flannel shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with work. His hands were calloused, nails chipped, but he held the mug gently like it might bruise. "Evan," I said. "From Omaha, graphic designer. Currently unemployed in every sense of the word," he nodded. "Eli, I run a small spread outside North Platte. Sheep, mostly. Some goats." "My granddad's place," Darla returned with pie. Cherry for him, lemon meringue for me. The meringue was taller than it had any right to be. "So," Eli said, cutting into his slice, "what sends a man out into a blizzard with a busted radiator?" I laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Caught my boyfriend with someone else. Packed a bag, took the car, didn't look back." Eli's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He set it down. "That's a hard road to walk alone." I didn't walk. I drove. Badly. I poked at the meringue. I kept thinking if I just got far enough, the picture in my head would fade. "Like distance could erase it." He was quiet a moment. "Distance helps. Time helps more. But some pictures stick." He tapped his temple. "Best you can do is hang new ones over them." I looked at him then. Really looked. There was a thin scar along his hairline, almost hidden by the cap. His eyes were older than his face, which couldn't have been more than 35. He carried himself like someone who'd learned early that the world didn't hand out soft landings. "What about you?" I asked. "What keeps a man out on a night like this?" "Couldn't sleep. Sheep needed checking. Found you instead." He took a bite of pie, chewed thoughtfully. My wife left 3 years ago. Took the dog, left the goats. Said I loved the land more than her. Maybe she was right. The confession hung between us, simple and unadorned. No self-pity, just fact. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. I've got the land. Got the goats. Got a porch that faces west. Sunsets you wouldn't believe. He smiled, small and crooked. Some nights I sit out there with a beer and a book, and it's enough. Darla refilled our coffee. Outside, snow started to fall in fat, lazy flakes. What do you read? I asked. Everything. Tony Hillerman when I want mystery. Wendell Berry when I need reminding why I stay. Right now, I'm on my 3rd go-through of Peace Like a River. That scene where the dad walks on air gets me every time, I laughed, surprised. I cried on a plane reading that. Flight attendant thought I was having a breakdown. Better than crying in a diner, he said, and we both smiled. We talked until the pie plates were empty and the coffee cold. I told him about the logo I'd designed for a brewery that went viral, about the mural I painted on the side of a record store in Omaha's Old Market, jukebox spilling musical notes into the sky. He told me about lambing season, about the year the creek flooded and took half his pasture, about the stray dog that showed up one winter and never left. Named her Junebug, he said. After the Carter song. She's a terrible guard dog, but she smiles when I play guitar. You play? Badly, but the goats don't complain? Snow thickened outside. Darla started stacking chairs. I should let you get home, I said, though I didn't want to. Eli glanced out the window. Roads'll be slick. You're welcome to the guest room. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and the coffee's better than this. I hesitated. Strangers, dark highways, all the warnings. But Eli had kind eyes and a voice like a lullaby, and I was so tired of being afraid. The ranch sat at the end of a long gravel drive, porch light glowing like a beacon. Inside smelled of wood smoke and coffee. Junebug greeted us with a wagging tail and a toy that squeaked indignantly. The guest room was small, quilt hand-stitched. Window facing a field silvered with snow. I lay awake listening to the house settle. To Eli moving quietly downstairs, boots by the door, the soft clink of a glass. At some point I slept. Morning came white and bright. Eli was in the kitchen, frying eggs in a cast-iron skillet. Junebug sat at his feet, hopeful. Coffee's on, he said. Figured you'd need it. We ate at a table scarred by years of meals. He'd set out jam his neighbor canned, bread he'd baked himself. The silence was easy. My car? I asked. Garage in town opened early. Friend of mine owes me a favor. Should be ready by noon. I nodded, buttering toast.
Thank you.
For everything, he waved it off. Neighbors help neighbors, even temporary ones. After breakfast, he showed me the barn. Goats bleated, pressing against the fence. One nudged my hand, demanding attention. Eli handed me a handful of grain. They're spoiled, he said. Think every human's here to serve them. I laughed, the sound startling a chicken into flight. Snow crunched underfoot. The air smelled of hay and cold earth. We walked the fence line, breath fogging. He pointed out the creek, frozen now, the stand of cottonwoods where he planned to build a writing cabin someday. For the books I'll never write, he said, half joking. You should, I told him. You've got stories. He looked at me then, something unreadable in his eyes. Maybe if I find the right words. Noon came too soon. The tow truck driver, a woman named Marisol, delivered my car with a new hose and a bill Eli quietly paid before I could protest. I stood by my driver's door, keys cold in my hand. I don't know how to thank you. Eli leaned against his truck, hands in his pockets. Drive safe, and Evan, when you hang those new pictures, make sure they're ones you want to look at every day. I nodded, throat tight. You too. He hesitated, then pulled a scrap of paper from his pocket, scribbled something. My number. If you're ever back this way, or if you just need to talk goats. I took it, our fingers brushing. I might take you up on that. He watched me pull away, standing in the snow until I turned onto the highway. In the rearview mirror, he raised a hand, small, steady. Denver was still hours away, but the ache in my chest had shifted. Not gone, but different. Like a bruise that would heal if I stopped pressing on it. I plugged my phone into the charger. The screen lit up with missed calls from Caleb, texts I deleted without reading. Then I opened a new message, typed Eli's number, and wrote, "Made it to the state line." Goats were right. Humans are here to serve. Coffee sometime? My treat. I hit send before I could overthink it. The reply came as I crossed into Colorado. Junebug says you're hired. Drive safe, city boy. I smiled, the first real one in days, and turned up the radio. Johnny Cash filled the car, voice rough and true. Outside, the plains stretched wide and white, full of new pictures waiting to be taken. The wind off the lake was sharp enough to cut through my jacket, but I didn't feel it. I was too busy staring at the screen of my phone, thumb frozen over the unsent message that would end 8 years of marriage. I can't do this anymore. That was all it said. 8 years, and that was all I could manage. Behind me, the headlights of passing cars on Highway 12 streaked across the water like comets. I'd pulled over at the public access point just outside Madison because I couldn't breathe in the house anymore. Couldn't sit on the couch where Alex and I had watched every season of The Great British Bake Off while eating ice cream straight from the carton. Couldn't look at the framed photo from our honeymoon in Door County without wanting to smash it. I hit send, then I turned the phone face down on the passenger seat, rolled the window all the way down, and let the cold slap me awake. The message delivered. The little blue check mark appeared. No typing bubbles. Of course there weren't. Alex was probably still at the apartment with her, the grad student with the septum piercing and the laugh that carried through the walls of the coffee shop where they'd met. I'd seen the texts. I'd seen the way Alex flinched when I walked into the room. I'd seen everything except the moment it started. A semi roared past, rocking my Subaru like a toy. I closed my eyes and tried to remember how to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Like the yoga app said. Like the therapist said. Like nothing helped. That was when I heard the low rumble of another engine. This one slower, deliberate. A pickup truck, older model, paint the color of storm clouds. It pulled in behind me, headlights dimming to parking lights. I tensed. Middle of nowhere, middle of the night, middle of a breakdown. Perfect time to get murdered. The driver's door opened. Boots hit gravel. A woman stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a canvas barn coat and a knit cap pulled low over dark curls. She raised both hands, palms open. "Hey, you okay?" "Saw your hazards from the road." Her voice was low, steady. Midwestern vowels, soft at the edges. I rolled the window up halfway. "I'm fine, just needed air." She nodded, didn't come closer. "Flat tire? Engine trouble?" "Emotional trouble," I said before I could stop myself. Then winced. "Sorry, that was honest," she finished. "I'm Nora." She gestured to the truck. "I've got jumper cables, a tire iron, and a thermos of coffee that's only slightly terrible." "Take your pick," I laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound startled me. Coffee sounds. "Actually perfect," she grinned. Crooked, warm, like she was surprised I'd said yes. "Be right back." She returned with a dented Stanley thermos and 2 tin camping mugs. Poured steaming coffee that smelled like burnt toast and hope. I took the mug with both hands. "I'm Eli." "Nice to meet you, Eli." She leaned against my hood, respectful distance between us. "You don't have to talk. But if you want to, I've got time," so I talked. About Alex, about the texts. About the way love can curdle into something that looks like resentment from the outside and feels like drowning from the inside. Nora listened without interrupting, sipping her coffee, nodding at the right moments. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, "My wife left me for a software engineer from Milwaukee. Said I smelled like goats and regret." She shrugged. "She wasn't wrong about the goats." I snorted into my mug. "You have goats?" 23. "And a donkey named Steve who thinks he's a dog." She tilted her head. "You ever milked a goat at 4 a.m. in February?" "Can't say I have." "It's character building," she paused. "Or soul crushing. Depends on the day." We talked until the coffee was gone and the sky over the lake turned the color of a healing bruise. She told me about the farm. 150 acres outside Baraboo, inherited from her grandfather, half of it in prairie restoration, half in vegetables and goats. About how she'd started a CSA to keep the lights on. About the year the flood took the lower field, and she'd cried harder over the tomatoes than over her divorce. I told her about the bookstore I managed downtown, how I'd always wanted to write but never had the guts, how Alex used to read my drafts and say, "This is good, babe," in a tone that meant, "This is fine." How I'd stopped writing altogether somewhere around year 5. "You should start again," Nora said simply. "Write the flood. Write the tomatoes. Write the part where you're sitting in a parking lot at 3 a.m. with a stranger who smells like barn boots." I laughed again. "You don't smell like barn boots, liar," she grinned. "But I appreciate the effort." The sky was lightening to pearl when I checked my phone. 4:17 a.m. "I should let you go." "You've got goats to milk." "I do," she admitted. "But I've also got a spare tire in the back if you need it. And a couch if you don't want to go home." I looked at my car. At the lake. At Nora, who was watching me with steady brown eyes and no expectation. "Couch sounds good." She drove ahead of me, taillights glowing like embers. The farm was 20 minutes north. Rolling hills, silos like sentinels, a farmhouse with peeling white paint, and a porch swing that creaked in the wind. The goats bleated from the barn as we pulled in. Steve the donkey trotted over to investigate my shoes. Inside, the house smelled like wood smoke and coffee and something herbal. Rosemary, maybe. Nora kicked off her boots. "Guest room's upstairs. Sheets are clean." I wasn't expecting company, but I wasn't not expecting it either. I laughed for the 3rd time that night. "That's weirdly comforting." She showed me the room. Sloped ceilings, a quilt that looked handmade, a window overlooking the pasture where the first light was turning the frost silver. Bathrooms down the hall. Towels in the closet. "I'll be up at 5:30. "You sleep as long as you need," I meant to. I really did. But at 5:45 I was awake, pulled by the sound of boots on floorboards and the low murmur of Nora talking to the animals. I padded downstairs in sock feet. She was in the kitchen, hair in a messy bun, pouring kibble into bowls for 3 border collies who danced around her legs. "Morning," she said without turning. "Coffee's fresh." "Eggs in the fridge if you're hungry." I poured coffee. Watched her move, efficient, unhurried. "Can I help?" "You ever mucked a stall?" "No. Want to learn?" I did. By 7, I'd shoveled manure, scattered hay, and been head-butted affectionately by a goat named Pickles. My jeans were ruined. My hands smelled like earth and animal. I felt alive, like I'd been asleep for years and someone had finally opened the window. Nora handed me a pitchfork. "You're a natural. Liar," she grinned. "Okay, you're enthusiastic. That counts." We ate breakfast on the porch. Scrambled eggs with chives from the garden, sourdough toast, more coffee. The dog sprawled at our feet. Steve the donkey stood at the fence, braying occasionally like he was telling a joke only he understood. "So," Nora said, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "What now?" I looked out at the fields, at the way the light caught on the frost. "I don't know, divorce, new apartment. Maybe write again?" She nodded. "You could stay a few days. If you want. The guest room's yours. No pressure. I've got Wi-Fi and a spare desk in the loft, and I make a mean lasagna." I should have said no. Should have gone back to Madison, faced the wreckage. Instead, I heard myself say, "Lasagna sounds good." I stayed 3 days. Then a week, then 2. I called the bookstore, took leave. Started writing in the loft while Nora worked the fields. The words came slow at first, rusty, awkward. Then faster. I wrote about the night by the lake. About the way Nora's hands looked when she poured coffee. About the sound Steve made when he was happy. Nora read the pages at night, sprawled on the couch with a beer. "This is good, Eli, like, really good. You're biased, maybe, but I'm also right. We didn't kiss, not then." There were moments, her hand brushing mine when we passed tools, the way she'd look at me across the dinner table like she was seeing something she hadn't expected. But we were careful. I was still married on paper. She was still healing from her own wreckage. One night in late October, the first hard frost glittered on the pumpkins. We'd spent the day harvesting the last of the kale, hands numb, breath fogging. Inside, Nora built a fire. I made hot chocolate with too much whiskey. We sat on the rug in front of the hearth, dogs piled around us like blankets. I should go back, I said. File the papers. Figure out my life, Nora poked the fire. Sparks flew up the chimney. You could. Or you could stay. Finish the book. See what happens when you're not running, I looked at her. Really looked. The firelight on her cheekbones. The way her curls escaped her bun in wild spirals. The steadiness in her eyes. I'm scared, I admitted. Me too. Of what? That this is just gratitude. That you'll wake up one day and realize I'm just the person who showed up when you were broken. She was quiet for a long time. I'm scared you'll leave when the book's done. That I'll be the chapter you outgrow. We stared at each other across the glow of the fire. Then I leaned in, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Our lips met, soft, tentative. Tasting of chocolate and whiskey and something that felt like beginning. It wasn't fireworks. It was embers. Slow burning, steady. The kind of warmth that lasts. I moved into the farmhouse in November, officially. The divorce was finalized in December. Alex kept the couch. I kept the dog-eared copy of the shipping news we'd fought over. Nora kept me. I finished the book in February. It was about breakdowns and second chances and the way kindness can look like a stranger's thermos of terrible coffee at 3 a.m. My agent, yes, I had an agent now, called it quietly devastating. It sold to SM. Way kindness can look like a stranger's thermos of terrible coffee at 3 a.m. My agent, yes, I had an agent now, called it quietly devastating. It sold to a small press in Madison. Then to a bigger one in New York. Nora built me a writing shed in the back pasture, windows facing the bluffs. I painted it the same storm cloud gray as her truck. She hung a sign above the door, Eli's office. Enter at your own risk. Goats welcome. We got married in June, in the lower field where the wildflowers were thick. Maya, my best friend from college, officiated, barefoot and teary. Steve wore a bow tie. The goats were not invited, but attended anyway. The bookstore took me back part-time. I taught a writing workshop on Thursdays. Nora expanded the CSA, started selling goat cheese at the farmer's market. We argued about whose turn it was to clean the chicken coop. We made up on the porch swing. We were ordinary and extraordinary in all the ways that matter. 2 years later, my second book came out. A novel this time. The dedication read, for Nora, who stopped when I was broken down. And for Steve, who still thinks he's a dog. At the launch party in Madison, Nora stood beside me in a dress the color of prairie grass, uncomfortable but enduring because she knew it mattered. Maya toasted with cheap champagne. My parents flew in from Florida and cried when they saw the farmhouse. Afterward, we drove home under a sky full of stars. Nora's hand rested on my thigh. The dog snored in the back seat. Steve brayed from the trailer. You know, I said, if I hadn't pulled over that night. You did, she interrupted. And I stopped. That's the story, I smiled. Best breakdown of my life, she squeezed my leg. Wait till you see what happens when the tractor breaks down next spring. We laughed all the way home.